Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast, the show where we sit down with today's most fascinating authors to explore their ideas, inspirations, and the stories behind their books. I'm your host, Chris Dabbs, and in this episode, we're joined by Ruth Leedy Carr. Ruth has been recognized for decades as one of the foremost voices on the Hollow Earth theory, with her early works published in the 1980s and praised by researchers in the UFO and alternative science community. Her latest book, Tipping Point for a Hollow Earth, How Asimov and Sagan Backed My Prophecy of a Polar Hole Shift to Europe, raises urgent questions about an approaching Earth axis shift, the hidden instability of Mars, and why mainstream science and media have been largely silent on these phenomena. In our conversation today, we'll explore Ruth's journey into this controversial field, the evidence that convinced her of a coming polar shift, and why she believes the insights of Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan offer a roadmap for humanity's future. This is going to be a deep dive into science, prophecy, and the possibilities of what lies ahead for our planet. Ruth, it's lovely to speak to you again. How are you?
Doing just great. Pleased to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no. It's good. We've spoken before, haven't we? And it was really interesting.
I really did enjoy it.
Good. So did I, actually. So that's great. Well, let's get straight into the questions because, in case listeners haven't listened to the previous episode, I think it's really good, obviously, to talk about what first drew you to the Hollow Earth theory and the prophecies of Edgar Cayce back in the 1980s.
Well, I was given this book about Edgar Cayce. It was called Edgar Cayce, the Sleeping Prophet, by Jess Stern, and there's a section about Earth change prophecies. And so I was puzzling about these prophecies, and I just happened to pick up a secondhand copy of The Hollow Earth. Almost wasn't willing to face ideas so odd, such an odd idea. But I took this book home, and I began to realize that the Hollow Earth theory answered some of the questions that were posed by the prophecies. It seemed to fit with the prophecies of Edgar Cayce. And then shortly after that, I read an interview of Isaac Asimov in which he seemed, well, for one thing, he predicted the imminent end of civilization by 2010. This was in 1980. And he also seemed to use several examples of hollow planet imagery. So I just sort of jumped to the conclusion that he might be hinting that a hollow planet disaster was going to threaten civilization. I mean, I that wasn't much evidence to go on, but that was my starting point. And I started to investigate Asimov's work as well as standard textbooks on various questions, the Earth's rotation and, the photographs of different planets and, just a deep dive into geology itself.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? Because you've really sort of put yourself into the scientific field to start researching things, right? But you've got a background in journalism and psychology and sociology. So how did that help you to shape the way that you approach the researching and writing the book?
My background, well, I would say the journalism training helped me a lot because the Second Coming, I really believe I've stumbled upon the Second Coming, the answer to the Second Coming prophecies. And that's considered to be the ultimate, sort of the holy grail in journalism, the ultimate news story that a journalist could aspire to break.
True.
And so I found that some of the hints and riddles from Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan were in the form of headlines, which since I had been trained in writing headlines, I was able to understand these riddles better as a result of the journalistic training. And of course, the whole idea of exposing cover-ups, that was part of my training. The idea that government can't always be trusted to tell us the whole truth about everything, and that people can be silenced, maybe more easily than we always think so. I mean, even scientists aren't, they're not supermen. They can be pressured like other people, too, I think.
That's very true, isn't it? So it helped you to, well, the journalism helped you to navigate those corridors, I guess, to make sure that you weren't silenced, as it were, because you knew better than to just stop if someone gave you a negative response, right? So you continued with your researching.
I think you're right. I think you're right that a journalist will always be asking, have I been told the truth? Have I been told the whole truth? And is there any reason why perhaps the truth has been withheld? You just have to ask every question you can think of and try to investigate every aspect of the story, if there is a story.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? Exactly. So your book is subtitled How Asimov and Sagan Backed My Prophecy. I mean, how did these two iconic science voices influence your work? And why did you feel they validated your vision?
Well, I found a number of examples in which my name appeared to be included in the riddles. Now, I didn't find that right away in working on the riddles. I've been working on them for about 15 years to really begin to understand them. And it's only been in the last few years that I realized that my name was in there more than I had realized before. And the reason my name was in there is that nobody else other than me was saying the things that Asimov and Sagan wanted to get across. They wanted to get across a hollow planet disaster in which polar holes, not just the axis would move, but the polar holes created by centrifugal force at the axis will also move. As the axis moves, that the holes would be reshaped by centrifugal force. No one else, I was the only one out there who was writing this, and so naturally they would have to endorse my work, hoping that I would catch on to that and share it with other people. I mean, it's really hard to prove with one or two examples that they used my name in the riddles. You'd have to read maybe 9 pages of one of my essays.
To get to the bottom of it. No, exactly. Well, I think we went through that the last time we spoke, didn't we? A few of those. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do that again today.
Oh, I could give you a couple of examples. Did you want me to?
Oh, yes, please.
Oh, well, the spelling is very good in this one example. A story has the title, There Was a Young Lady. And you can see the word lady is closely related to Leedy, which was my last name at the time. But anyway, so the spelling is good in this. As I can see if I can recall exactly what it was. Y-O-U, spelled correctly, Ruth Ann Leedy, my whole name, including the E on the end of Ann, and Ruth spelled with a U, not O-O, and Leedy spelled with a Y, not I. So the whole name is spelled correctly, Ruth Ann Leedy. You say there are 3 hollow worlds, and hollow is spelled with the W included, which in a lot of riddles the W is not included, but in this case it was. So you say there are 3 hollow worlds. I agree. Now, the I is not spelled correctly because there's no I in There Was a Young Lady. So he had to spell it E-Y-E. That's the only misspelling in that riddle. I think it's a riddle. I mean, I can't prove it with one example.
Sure. Well, no, that's intriguing anyway. Yeah.
But now there's a short one. There's a really short one from Asimov. The name is Wilson Roth from The Robots of Dawn. And if you spell my name R-O-O-T-H, the solution to that riddle is Ruth L. knows, that's N-O-S, knows Earth, I-R-T-H, is hollow, spelled correctly with the W. Ruth L. knows Earth is hollow. And the reason I quote that one is that it's short. There aren't a whole lot of ways to decipher a short riddle. A long riddle might have 50 solutions,
Yeah.
But a short one, fewer. See. Oh, well, I don't know. from that same novel, there's a name called a high planetary official named Rutalin Horder. Now you see, the first three letters are the first three letters of my name. So anyway, this one I believe is translated as Ruth Ann, all spelled correctly so far, but Leedy spelled with an I instead of a Y. Ruth Ann Leedy, you hold a hollow earth, and that's hollow without the W, a hollow earth in your hand. And you in both cases is spelled with you, and then you are for your, in your hand. So the message with not quite perfect spelling is Ruth Ann Leedy, you hold a hollow earth in your hand. And one validation of this is in the plot. This character, he's not only really represents the planet being a high planetary official, he's the nearest thing to a chief executive on this planet Aurora. So he's, when you have a high planetary official, that's a person who's likely to be used as a symbol of a planet. And also he holds the future of Earth in his hand, in that he's deciding a case in which his decision makes a difference as to whether the people of Earth are going to be allowed to explore other worlds. So he does hold the future of Earth in his hand. So I think that's a you might say a confirmation of the message that I found in that name.
Mm. So
there are others. You know.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Let's have some more.
Okay. There's in the story, The Critic on the Hearth, there's a character named Agatha Dorothy Lissauer, and a message can be found in there. Ruth A. Leedy, you say the Earth is hollow, and that's without the W. The Earth is hollow, and the answer, and then the rest of it is, I agree, and that's the end of that.
There you are. It's so powerful, isn't it? I mean, what did you think when you discovered these? Because it must have been quite amazing. You know, you suddenly sit there and go, hang on a second. Are they actually talking to me? And then when you've worked it out, you think, wow, they're really validating what I think.
Well, yes, I could be mistaken about any one of them. And now there are two matching riddles that make a particularly powerful statement, because it's statistically, it's not likely that two characters from the same story, who are maybe, fiancés, engaged couple, that the same message can be found in each name. And anyway, I need to mention this one to take up your time.
No, go ahead, yeah.
It's from the story Perfectly Formal, a sub-story in the story Cal from the Gold Collection, which is the final science fiction collection of Asimov's. And the one character is named Winthrop Carver Cadwell, and his fiancée is named Hortense Hepzibah with a Z, Hepzibah Lowot, Lowot. So in his name, and I just recently found this, and so I probably won't be able to remember it all, Ruth Ann L, and that's Rooth, and then Anne and L. Ruth Ann L will be proven to be correct, comma, a real prophet. Hollow planet Earth will, no, not soon. Hollow planet Earth will be reborn with a new hole at each pole. Okay, that's it. I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up between the two, but they are similar. Ruth Ann L will be proven to be correct, comma, a real prophet. Hollow planet Earth will be reborn with a new hole at each pole. And now in Hortense Hepzibah Lowett, you get the same spelling of Ruth Ann L. with O-O-T-H. Ruth Ann L. is a real prophet, realizes that the Earth will soon be reborn with new polar holes. I think I got all of it correct. Anyway, so with these two messages, they're similar enough that I would say statistically, it's very unlikely that you would have two the same phrase, hollow planet Earth, in each name. And that's all I noticed for several years. And then I noticed that you can say hollow planet Earth be hollow. And then I let it go at that for several years. And then I realized that the phrase will be reborn can be found in each name. And then I realized that the word prophet can be found in each name. And then I realized that my name can be spelled in exactly the same way in each name. Ruth Ann L. Ruth misspelled, and then Ann spelled correctly, and then L, just the initial. And so with all those similarities, I think that's one of the strongest statements that Asimov has made in all of his work, because you can find umpteen messages in a name, but to find the same message in two different names that are linked together is not likely.
Well, no.
You know.
No, that's true.
And you can go through all his work, and you can hardly find any other name that can spell hollow planet Earth. He quoted the name of Alfred Pennyworth, and I don't even know if that was his riddle, but that was in the same book. No, it was in Magic. But that's the only other name that contains hollow planet Earth. But I don't find hollow planet Earth be hollow in Pennyworth. You know, you just can't go. You can't get to those phrases that I just mentioned from any other name in his work. I've looked at them all, almost all of them. I can tell you that those words and phrases are not found in the other character names that he created, just in those two from the same story.
That's pointing towards things, isn't it? So I think it's time now to tell our listeners then about tipping point for a hollow Earth. So you speak of an approaching Earth axis shift. I mean, can you explain in simple terms what that means and why it's an urgent thing?
Well, the north and south magnetic poles will be moving. This can be precipitated by the appearance of another hot spot, or also known as a core spot, near Indonesia. And this was stated by Jeremy Bloxham and David Gubbins in their December 1989 article in Scientific American, which they said that if another core spot pops up, a reversal is likely to be triggered immediately. And a reversal is when the north magnetic pole wanders off toward the southern hemisphere, some other spot in the hemisphere, not the same place where the southern pole is now. If it would only go to the same place where the pole is now, there would be no axis shift.
Sure.
But it's going to go to some other spot in the southern hemisphere, and likewise the southern magnetic pole will wander up to some place in the northern hemisphere. And I believe that the location that you can find now for these two poles gives you a clue as to where these new magnetic poles will be, because you have the northern hemisphere where land has been slowly moving north, but yet the northern magnetic pole is located over water, and conversely in the southern hemisphere, land has been leaving that hemisphere, and yet that there is a continent right there where the south magnetic pole is. So these clues that are contained right in the globe itself tell us that the north magnetic pole is probably going to seek water when it goes toward the southern hemisphere. and that the south magnetic pole is probably going to seek land. And based on the prophecies of Edgar Casey, you can get more specific, but then you have to go into a whole study of Casey as to why he should be trusted. And then you can also find indications in the riddles of Isaac Asimov and Carl Sagan. They talk about allow no one near Norway, a riddle along that line, advising that certain northern areas of Europe should be evacuated. But as far as actually proving where the new magnetic poles will be located, I think it could probably be done by scientists, and they'd have to study the magnetic properties of these hotspots that have been arising. There are two of them in the southern Atlantic Ocean and Indian on either side of Africa, and if the third one pops up, it too will have magnetic characteristics. And if those characteristics are studied closely, that will probably provide a clue. They'll probably point in some way or another toward the new magnetic poles, south and north. And that's to me the only real clue as to where the new poles will be. Otherwise you can go round in circles trying to analyze: is Casey correct? Is Asimov correct? Have I interpreted these riddles correctly? And that's not real evidence. The real evidence would probably be found in the magnetic characteristics of these hotspots.
Sorry.
And that when the new magnetic poles are established, when they settle into their permanent locations, the solar wind will be striking those new spots, because the magnetic field deflects the solar wind from most other areas and funnels the solar wind down toward the magnetic poles. And so there's just no way that the solar wind can fail to define a new axis by this process. It's just inevitable. And you can see that the solar wind is defining the axis we have today because of the photographs of the aurora, which ring the axis that's caused by the solar wind's impact in a circle around the pole. That shows you that the solar wind is defining the axis we have today and has the power to redefine the axis after the magnetic poles have moved. And the fact that this event has been in the works for 2,500 years, during which the field has been slowly decaying in strength, the fact that this has been known to be a precursor of a field reversal for all this time should make it an event which we would all be looking forward to as, the sign of a new age on this planet, an age that's been in the works for all that time. And the fact that people don't even know what a geomagnetic field reversal is, the fact that they don't know that there was an ancient reversal that resulted in an axis shift. This was reported by CBS on January 20th, 2000. They don't know that there was an axis shift, at that time in 80 million years ago with a field reversal, and they don't even know that the axis is able to shift. The fact that the public has been so totally ignorant, has no idea that this event is on the way, and Congress likewise doesn't know. And when Senator Joseph Biden made a request to the U.S. Geological Survey for information about this, based on something I had sent him, the Geo Survey issued a reply indicating not one hint that this event was coming, and just said that there is no major cataclysm due to a rapid magnetic polar shift in the near term is anticipated. They didn't really deny that it was coming. They just basically said, well, it's not coming next week.
Exactly.
I mean, it was an incomplete reply. They should have told him that it is coming, and they didn't tell him. And so Congress didn't proceed to do any further investigation. There was,
Well, exactly. But I think it as well. I mean, How catastrophic or not would this polar reversal be? Would it just be heralding a new age, as you said earlier on? What are the consequences of it happening?
Well, for one thing, you have the equatorial bulge. Now, one thing about that is that the equator covers a lot more area than either pole. I mean, the pole, if you believe that a polar hole is going to move to the new magnetic poles, that will be extremely serious for a radius of, I don't know, 500 or 1,000 miles. I don't know exactly, but it'll be a concentrated area. But the new equatorial bulge will go all the way around the 25,000 miles of the circumference of the planet, and so it'll change sea levels. The I can't tell you whether it's 25 feet or 250 feet difference from from the level of the equatorial bulge compared to an area that does not have the equatorial bulge. I can't tell you exactly how many feet difference the sea level would be, but but I believe that the Casey prophecies for Japan and Western California are based on the idea that sea levels will rise at a new equator, based on the idea that Northern Europe will be a new polar site. And I can't say that Casey specifically said Northern Europe would be a new polar site, but he did say that that the upper portion of Europe will be changed as in the twinkling of an eye. And nothing that catastrophic was said about any other area of the Northern Hemisphere. So I homed in on that area as being, Casey's indication of where the new South Polar hole would be. And your question is how catastrophic? How catastrophic is it going to be? The main things that will happen is that, well, Japan is supposed to be totally flooded, and probably a large slice of California and the other western states would be flooded. But that's not the only thing. There's also seismic activity that would be set off by the new equatorial bulge, as well as by the change in the present equatorial bulge. In other words, the parts of the present equatorial bulge would go away, and that too would cause eruptions and earthquakes. And so with this going on for 25,000 miles all the way around the planet, that's a potential for quite a few volcanic eruptions. And Casey does predict a lot of volcanic activity in the what he calls the torrid area, the tropical areas. And I think the riddles of Asimov and Sagan also predict that. More so from Asimov, because he did more riddles than Sagan did.
All right. Yeah.
But Sagan did one of the very, very finest riddles on Earth axis shifting, which is mentioned in my book, in which one character name contains the words Earth axis shift as well as the words field reversal. And this character happens to be issuing a doomsday warning, a warning of a possible doomsday machine. And the plot of the novel, which is Sagan's novel Contact, the plot of the novel involves public anxiety over a possible doomsday or even an Earth axis shift in the case of many members of the public. So Earth axis shifting is a prominent feature of this novel. And this character is stirring up those fears without actually mentioning axis shifting per se, but he mentions doomsday. And so his name containing Earth axis shift and field reversal, and I mean I can give you my translation of the whole name if you want, but this name is very outstanding in that it mentions so much about the process by which the axis would be shifted. So do you want the full full translation?
Yeah, please.
The name is Stefan Alexeyevich Baruta, And Alexeyevich is spelled Alexeivich. So anyway, I think that the full translation is Ruth Ann Leedy, and that's Leedy with an I. Ruth Ann Leedy understands that a field reversal shall cause the Earth's axis to, and that's TU, to be shifted by, and that's BI, to be shifted by the sun in the near future. And there's a possibility of using the phrase in 5 to 7 decades, but I don't necessarily advocate that. You know, different people could decipher this riddle a little differently because it's so long. There's so many possibilities. I just used the phrase in the near future because I felt that was a safer statement than to try to be specific as to exactly how many decades he might be talking about. But if he said 5 to 7 decades, that would put the reversal in 2035 to 2055.
So not far away then.
And I could give you two. Not only did Bloxham and Gubbins raise the possibility of an immediate reversal with a core spot emerging, there was another author, Garrett Verschuur, who wrote a book called Cosmic Catastrophes, and it came out in 1978, and he said that it looked to him as though a reversal could be expected to begin in 50 to 150 years. The 50 years are up in 2028. And the very title of the book, Cosmic Catastrophes, indicates that he thinks it's serious, or he thought it was serious. And most of the experts admit that various species have gone extinct during reversals of the Earth's field, although they don't get specific as to exactly why. They say, well, okay, undersea species became extinct, and this other species over here. And so that points to a cataclysmic event when every member of a certain species was wiped out.
Mm. Well, it shows, well, I suppose that's possible, isn't it? If we're talking about magnetic fields moving and things like that. Now, one of the things about this is obviously the hollow Earth theory. And one of the things, again, that's kind of got you involved in this was the lighted polar hole of Mars. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you could briefly explain that to us and let us know why you think that NASA is completely silent on this and completely ignores it. I find this part fascinating.
Well, I would give NASA a lot of credit for producing these pictures. They set up, they knew pretty much what they were going to get because they knew what the position of the planet was going to be. They knew, how long it was going to take for Mariner 7 to get over to Mars. So they knew what the pictures were going to show. And these pictures showed the South Polar, so-called polar cap, on the night side, and the pictures were released, but they were retouched. Particularly the one that appeared in this Encyclopedia Britannica of 1974. That was really obvious that it was retouched. The whole print was lightened, and then the background sky was darkened underneath the so-called cap, in order to make it appear as though the cap was on the day side. But it was most certainly not on the day side, because when a planet or moon goes through phases, only 180 degrees of the perimeter can be seen from crescent moon stage all the way through until you almost get to full phase. The amount of the perimeter that's visible is always 180 degrees, unless it's a new moon or a full moon, in which case it's either 0 degrees or 360. In other words, there's no in between. There's no point at which 240 degrees of the perimeter is visible. And yet, this picture from Britannica portrays Mars as having a visible perimeter that discernible, a contrast between the sky and the planet, the edge of the planet, that well over 180 degrees supposedly being visible. That's because they darkened the background sky underneath the cap to make it look like the cap was on the day side. And the other thing that was done for several of these pictures was that they erased the day-night border, which had to fall at the right edge of the polar cap. So it's the right side of the image that has received most of the light. And so when the day-night border is supposed to fall at the right edge, based on as I say, the 180-degree limit, and the bright spot on the side of the planet would be at the center point of that 180-degree arc. So you measure 90 degrees from that bright spot, and you come to the right edge of the polar cap. And so the day-night border should have been there, and if it had been left there and shown to the public that way, it would have been obvious that the day side had ceased at the right edge of the polar cap, and that therefore the rest of the polar cap had to have been on the night side. So it was absolutely essential to keep it from being too obvious that the polar cap was on the night side. It was absolutely essential to wipe away that day-night border. And so you see in Patrick Moore's Guide to Mars, almost the entire southern hemisphere is black. And same thing in Space Science and Astronomy, which is based on Sky and Telescope magazine. And also in Pictorial Guide to the Planets, in each case, you can't see that day-night border at the right edge of the polar cap, but it should have been there. You're not going to see in reality. You're not going to see coal blackness all the way across the southern hemisphere, extending way close to the equator. It's just not natural. I mean, it's hard for me to prove that, but it's obvious that the polar cap, all you have to do is measure 90 degrees from the bright spot, and the polar cap is well beyond that limit in each case.
Right.
And if this could be established, if people would accept that these pictures show a lighted polar opening on Mars, if people would demand that this be recognized, that would be the end of the hollow Earth cover up as well. And also, I think that the axis shift cover up would also fall, and we would be given all the truth about all of this.
No, absolutely. So that leads nicely on to my next question, really, which is to explain exactly what this hollow Mars thing has got to do, and a lighted pole. This is it, isn't it? So yeah, explain that, because that's fascinating, the lighted pole, and obviously this is the whole reason for your theories, right? Or the reason for your research.
Oh, well, the light has to come from the interior, because there's just no evidence of light shining down upon the pole from outside. So it has to be coming from the interior, indicating that there's the hole there at the pole. And it would be the sun within Mars, around which the shell is in orbit. And that explains how a planet can be hollow without collapsing inward due to gravity. It's the fact that the shell is in orbit around the central sun, in the same way that the shell of a spheroidal planetary nebula is in orbit around the central sun. People don't know much about planetary nebulae, but that's described in Britannica as well. And there was a quote to the effect that H.D. Curtis of the Lick Observatory found in 1918 that oblate, spheroidal, or truncated shells thinner at the equator than at the poles accounted satisfactorily for the appearance of many planetaries. That to me told me that that's the structure of a hollow planet, that it probably began in the nebular state as a miniature planetary nebula, and when it solidified, when the shell solidified, it was thinner at the equator than at the poles, just as it would have been if it was in the nebular state. So I thought that was a very helpful piece of information from Britannica.
So what you're saying is, if I remember correctly from our last conversation, is that the hollow planets are a natural phenomena, and as opposed to the what we consider to be the normal formation of a solar system, where everything coalesces at certain stages in gravity, like we have the planets at certain positions, where space dust and rocks and things like that all coalesced. But what you're saying here is, if I remember, is that you've got a small sun, which is, again, something we discussed, isn't it? A small sun where all of this planetary material coalesced into a spheroid shape rather than a small solar system. Have I got that right?
Rather than a small solar system?
Yeah.
Well, it would have been, yes, it would have been very small if it had been a solar system. But the relevant quote that I come back to on this question is the fact that several times in the work of Asimov, I noticed him saying that there's a high percentage of heavier elements in the inner planets. And to me, this provides a clue as to why there would be an orbiting shell instead of just orbiting moons. Like you have orbiting moons with Jupiter and Saturn and all these. But since there's a higher proportion of heavier elements in the inner planets, there's enough heavier elements to create not just moons around the edge, like with the gas giants, but to create an actual complete shell.
Which is exactly, which is incredible. So obviously we've talked about the imagery that's become the evidence, and the way that NASA's put that together, and how the Encyclopedia Britannica published these sorts of things. So I mean, you've described, hang on, no, let's go back to Earth as well. So you're saying that Earth is the same, is obviously, it was formed in the same way as Mars potentially was. And I think we also had a conversation as to what could possibly be in the hollow planets, as it were. You touched on it earlier on, but could you explain what that would potentially be?
What would be inside? Well, I suppose there's a tribe of either humans or humanoids, and I assume that they would be racially different from us. As there are racial differences all over the exterior of the planet, so why shouldn't there be a racial difference with a tribe that's inside the planet? And the question is just, how different are they? And I've found possible clues that those people in the interior could actually be the Sasquatch, but I'm not prepared to say that those riddles are conclusive. All I would say is that the people who live inside are different enough from us to feel like they're a superior race, and that we're a bunch of dummies, and that justifies them in exploiting us, perhaps using us for biological purposes or whatever they want to use us for, and wiping us out from time to time when they feel like it. You see, if they really identified with us and considered us to be on a par with them, they wouldn't treat us that way.
Well,
I just think that they're different. They're just that different, and they probably also think that we would look down on them if we knew if we knew that they were the Sasquatch, for example. We would think they were ugly, that they were monkey men. That we would make fun of them for that, and so they've got their defenses up there. They want to assure themselves that they're superior to us. That's the psychology of it as I see it.
Yeah, well, no,
I can't prove it. I'm just speculating.
Yeah, and for exactly, I think, and for people who may think, the Sasquatch is, like a lower being, as it were, to us. Again, we may not really be able to recognize a higher being. I think this is the point, isn't it? Does does an animal recognize that, I don't know, we are a higher being to the animal? I don't know. That's not
One of
my...
the things about the Sasquatch, if you believe that the footprints are genuine, which some authorities are pretty sure they are, and the few photographs that exist, you have to wonder, how do they manage to keep us from ever finding their bones?
Oh, yeah.
And see, this to me is a sign that they are pretty intelligent. I mean, because we leave the bones of our deceased humans all in many different places to be discovered later, but they don't.
True. That's very true, actually. Yeah, otherwise there wouldn't be a question mark over their existence, would there?
Right.
Exactly. Well, we're starting to run out of time, but there's a couple of questions that I really want to sort of to ask. You were once called the world's foremost proponent of the hollow earth theory, which kind of makes sense if you think that people are leaving kind of messages for you in books and riddles. I mean, how has that recognition shaped your career and the reception of your work, do you think?
Well, I quoted that statement by William L. Moore, but if you knew what the context was, you would realize it wasn't exactly a total compliment, because he was he was trying to encourage his readers, and I can't remember the exact name of his magazine. He was trying to encourage them to send for free information from me, that I was prepared to send a thick packet of information to anyone who inquired or requested it. And I never said that. I sent him a thick packet of information because he had a newsletter and I'm a magazine, and I thought he might be able to help me support the ideas that I was promoting. But he did not agree with my ideas at all. He made fun of and criticized my work, and so when he said I was the foremost proponent of the hollow earth theory, he was basically saying, well, this is a theory that I think is ridiculous, that he himself thought was ridiculous. So it wasn't a total compliment.
Right. Oh, I'm with you. Okay, so you had to take that one with a pinch of salt, as we would say. I see. So what challenges then have you faced personally in pushing forward a message and a theory, I guess, that many consider fringe or controversial?
People have been pretty tolerant, considering how the theory is not well respected. So now when I've presented it to members of my family, usually they don't have a whole lot to say. They might make one or two comments, but they don't have a whole lot to say, because I guess they don't want to step into the limelight and take whatever risks are involved. Depending upon a person's job, it could be a hindrance. In my work as a church organist and a piano teacher, they did not make a whole lot of difference what people thought about my hobby here, my investigation. But if I had a job in newspaper work, perhaps, and I was pursuing this issue, it might have cost me my job easily.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the problems, though, isn't it? As you were saying about being silenced earlier on, and where your journalism expertise helps you to navigate that, I think. So finally, then, unfortunately, because we could again talk for ages about this, what do you hope that readers and listeners of this podcast will take away from your book? Is it I don't know, awareness or preparation, even, or something more spiritual, perhaps?
Well, I'm hoping that somehow or another, there's enough public concern that the leaders of various governments will realize that some of their citizens are going to be in danger, and that this danger could arise suddenly with the emergence of a new hotspot, which would cause the axis to begin to shift. And if the axis were to begin to shift, next month, there just wouldn't be time to evacuate huge areas of shall we say, Europe or Japan, there just wouldn't be enough time to get everyone out. And the other thing that there wouldn't be enough time for is to secure the toxic waste dumps, the areas where radioactive materials have been stored.
Good point. Yeah.
Where, if you're familiar with this novel Eruption by Michael Crichton, finished by James Patterson, in which a single eruption was expected to wipe out all life on Earth because of the toxic waste that would be released. Well, if you had a new polar hole being created in Northern Europe and disturbing the nuclear sites, I don't know how many there would. I know France has a lot of them, and if all these nuclear sites were disturbed, the amount of radioactivity created released into the air would be very bad for many forms of life all over the planet, and there wouldn't be a really safe place in that case. And so that's why we need to prepare far enough ahead of time to make sure that these waste materials, chemicals and everything else, are not released into the atmosphere when the shift comes. That's what I'd like to make sure of.
Yeah. So preparation, it's a really good point as well, right? If you're talking about seismic events or anything else that's happening like that, then yeah, of course, I see what you mean. Well, Ruth, you know what? We're out of time now. So unfortunately.
So helpful. Thank you.
But listen, everyone, that concludes today's episode of the BrightWord Books podcast. A special thank you to our guest, Ruth Leedy Carr, for sharing her decades of research and her perspective on the hollow earth theory and, of course, that potential axis shift that she warns is approaching. Now, if you'd like to continue exploring these ideas for yourself, then don't miss her new book, Tipping Point for a Hollow Earth, How Asimov and Sagan Backed My Prophecy of a Polar Hole Shift to Europe, which is now available on Amazon. It's a thought-provoking read that combines science, prophecy, and urgent warnings about our planet's future. So thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to the BrightWord Books podcast for more conversations with authors who challenge the way we see the world. So until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep exploring new ideas. Ruth, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again, and I can't wait till the next time. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.